Taramai, good morning. This is Judith Lay welcoming you to Manx Radio and to the podcast of this week's edition of At Your Service.
Manx Radio.
Today, Ruth Rice is back with another suggestion for making the most of Lent, these weeks of preparation leading to the great celebration of Easter. And Ruth Keggin-Gell and Reverend Alex Brown find they have a shared interest that will find its best expression in some wonderful music from Manx choir Kirchen-Kujak. But as the plight of Ukraine and its people continues to dominate our thoughts, let's once again use our opening music as a time of prayer and reflection for guidance to make the right judgments by those in power to swiftly bring peace and protection for all. Someone very familiar with the cost of war and the price of peace is Terry Waite. These are the words that he wrote at the request of composer Karl Jenkins for The Peacemakers, a collection of musical settings of the words of peace activists from all around the world. Peace is the fragile meeting of two souls in harmony. Peace is an embrace that protects and heals. Peace is a reconciling of opposites. Peace is rooted in love. It lies in the heart, waiting to be nourished, blossom and flourish until it embraces the world. May we know the harmony of peace.
Peace is the fragile meeting of two souls in harmony. Peace is an embrace that protects and heals. Peace is a reconciling of opposites. Peace is rooted in love. It lies in the heart, waiting to be nourished, blossom and waiting to be nourished, blossom and flourish, until it embraces the world. May we know the harmony of peace. May we sing the harmony of peace until in the last of days we rest in peace. We rest in peace. We rest in
Featuring words by Terry Waite, that was A Meditation from The Peacemakers by Karl Jenkins. Ruth Keggin-Gell is in Grenada, the Manx Language Development Officer with Culture Vannin. Grenada means encourager or motivator, and that sums up Ruth's role perfectly, as she's dedicated to encouraging us to get interested and involved in the widest possible use of the Manx language, a language that's both ancient and very modern.
Manx is really, really old. It's been on the Isle of Man for over 1,500 years. Unbrokenly, actually. It's been an unbroken continuum of Manx speakers. We've had people learning from the native speakers, and that kind of created a bridge between native speakers and new learners. And so it's been kind of ongoing for a very long time. And so it's really old. And yet you've got children at the Bunskull doing things like translating the songs from Encanto into Manx, and that's such a great incidental organic use of the Manx language, something that we're seeing that's really exciting and vibrant. I grew up going to the Howe Methodist Chapel. I went to Sunday school there from an early age, and that was very much a big part of my upbringing, and very much felt like a big family up there as well, and still does. And I think language is a hugely important thing, isn't it, in worship? And I was really kind of reminded by the fact that actually in the past, Manx would have been a really key integral part of worship. Some of the first texts that were actually translated into Manx were done so community could actually understand them. So the Bible and the Book of Common Prayer and things like that. And also some of the preachers would have actually, done their sermons in Manx as well. So Manx is an important part of religion. And I thought to myself that actually some people might like to use Manx in worship, but just not know quite how to go about it and want a little bit of a helping hand to start off. And it doesn't mean that people have to go in hardcore with, the entire Lord's Prayer in Manx and try and do that. They can use simple phrases like Buista G, thanks be to God, and other phrases that come across in liturgy all the time as well. And so I thought, well, what would be a good thing to do is to help people, if they want to inject a bit of Manx language into their worship, to feel equipped to be able to do so and give them the tools to be able to do so.
And so it was that Ruth's idea of offering help to use Manx language in our church services was born. But just how much interest would there be? Let's go back to Ruth again.
I'm talking to the Reverend Alex Brown now about using Manx in worship and the idea of identity as well. So Alex, how do you feel about Manx being used in worship? What does it mean to you?
Actually, when we come to worship, I want to be able to worship with everything about my identity being authentic. And half the population of the Isle of Man were born here. So surely there must be something that we can do which for that half of the population and for the half like me who've moved over because we just love it here and want to be part of Manx culture, surely there are ways that we can root ourselves into our past and our present and our future, which is one of the things that church stands for, bringing all of the past together, hope for the present and hope for the future. So for me, using Manx language as part of our worship, it just makes sense. I trained to be a teacher in North Wales and learnt Welsh, and my mum's Welsh. And before going to North Wales, I only knew 4 words in Welsh. 4 phrases. I knew Borada, Nosta, Yakida and Shop, which mean hello, goodbye, cheers, shop. And that was it really, apart from Araf, go slowly. And learning Welsh, for me, really helped me to root myself into half of my life that had been missing until that point. And the language rooted me into the places around me and the people around me. And I've loved coming to the Isle of Man and just seeing glimpses of that. And when you go to the museum and you hear the recordings of really old Manx voices with the really strong Manx accent, and going to Cregnish and seeing the stuff that's going on there and hearing people talking in Manx, it just, for me, it says I am part of an ancient culture that is still living and still thriving today. I love when my kids, one is 13 and one is 6, when they just naturally burst into a Manx song that they've learned at school. And it's nothing to them. It's not a big thing. And that's how it should be. They should be moving in and out of English and Manx whenever they can. And I'm rubbish at that. And I wish that I was better at it. My wife Amanda is much better. When she was a teenager, she was in Manx bands and she learnt Manx songs and went off to the Cognac and went to other countries showcasing Manx music. And I'm really jealous of that, because when I grew up in Bedfordshire in the 80s, there was no sense of being English. It was all what's new and what's in the charts and what's in the movies. And if it wasn't contemporary, it was a waste of time, was the message that 80s England poured into me. And then moving here, I've discovered that's actually a lie. And I long for a sense of rootedness. And I think Manx language does that for us.
Where do you feel that Manx would fit naturally into a structured worship setting?
Particularly in the Church of England or Catholic or Methodist services, where things are much more structured and written down. There are certain places where there's repetition every single week. So we use phrases such as Christ has died, Christ has risen, Christ will come again, which are already repetitive. Already there's only a few parts of language in there, and we know what we're saying. So it would make sense for those parts to be in Manx with an English subtitle underneath them, so we know what we're saying. It would get tenses into us, it would get worship language into us, and I love it when we get to the end of a service and the person leading the service gives the final blessing in Manx or says the Lord Prayer in Manx. You know, there's stuff like that which, because I already know what they mean, when I hear the words, actually it enables me to worship along with them, even if I can't understand all of the words that are being said, because I know what they are saying. So I think places like that, it fits really, really well and naturally and easily into what we're doing.
Ruth Keggin-Gell was talking with Pioneer Minister Reverend Alex Brown about using the Manx language in worship. And that was the Manx choir Ceirdean with a perfect example of what Ruth and Alex were talking about. Parts of a service where the words are spoken and then repeated, an ideal opportunity to comfortably use some Manx language. In that case, the words were Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy. And the piece that we've just heard is one of a set of 5 musical settings of the prayers found in the Roman Catholic, Anglican and Methodist communion services. The Manx translation of the prayers was by the late Adrian Pilgrim, and the music is by Ceirdean musical director Annie Kissack. We'll hear another of the pieces a little bit later. But now let's go back to my conversation with Ruth. Having got an enthusiastic reaction from Reverend Alex to her suggestion to try to encourage the use of a little bit of Manx in our worship, what's Ruth got in mind now?
Well, as part of trying to make Manx as accessible as possible and used by as many people as possible, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be running a morning workshop down at Thie in Peel, Friday the 25th of March. And it's from 9:30 to 12:30, and it's aimed at helping people use Manx in worship in easy and accessible ways. So we'll be going through things like prayers and blessings, but also simple greetings that you might want to use with congregations, just saying Fastamai and Guramayu and things like that as well, really important. And also some liturgical phrases as well, so things that you would hear, maybe responsorial things that the congregation would say back, and And because there is a lot of repetition you find in these phrases, and actually, why not have a go at doing those in Manx? You know, we live on the Isle of Man. People do speak Manx. It feels quite natural to do those things in Manx. And it's a way of using Manx incidentally in everyday life, which is, of course, what I want to see more of, or we all want to see more of as well.
Would you say, Ruth, from your studies, that the Celtic people were a naturally spiritual people, that a spiritual side of their life was quite natural and quite important to them?
Well, wouldn't it be great to go back 1,500 years ago? I mean, certainly St Columba, Columcille, is reported to have brought Christianity up to, Iona from Ireland, and he's an important figure here in the Isle of Man as well. And we've just celebrated 1,500 years since his birth last year, and actually all the cultural and linguistic ties that link us between Ireland, Scotland and the Isle of Man. It's an interesting thing about spirituality. I certainly feel like when I've been up to places like Iona, and I've heard other people say this as well, that it feels like the phrase a thin place, where you feel, whether you believe in God or not, and however you feel about spirituality, that there's just something there that just makes you feel like, doesn't feel quite earthly, but it does feel earthly. You feel rooted, and yet you feel kind of drawn to something bigger. And it's really hard to kind of put into words. But I think the Isle of Man is an amazing place, isn't it? So I'd love to go back and see what people thought 1,000 years ago.
Wouldn't we all? But we do know that this is another wonderful opportunity to connect with our past and make it a present as well. So do people have to register, sign up for the morning, Ruth? How do we go about it?
If you'd like to come along, please just send me an email. So send that to Manx Language, all one word, at culturevannin.im. So Culture Vannin, CultureVannin.im. And I'm Ruth. And if you just say that you'd like to come, and let me know if you want to stay afterwards for lunch, because Thie will be putting on a bit of a lunch if you want to stay. Yeah, it would be just great to hear from anyone who wants to come along and to try and use Manx in worship in different ways. It doesn't have to be preachers and things as well. It can be anybody who, perhaps somebody leads music in church, or youth workers, anything like that. Anyone who wants to just explore accessible and easy ways of using Manx.
It sounds wonderful. And also people could get more details or register via Thie's own website, retreathouse.im. All the details will be there. Ruth Keggin-Gell, Gurmayed, for being with us this morning.
Gurmayed.
Cyrgin Cúideach again with organist Graham Kirkland and the musical setting of the Communion Prayer. Holy, holy, holy Lord, God of power and might, heaven and earth are full of your glory. Hosanna in the highest. And Ruth Keggin-Gell's workshop, taking a look at using Manx in worship, is at Thie, House of Life. That's Ballawattleworth House on Tynwald Road in Peel, and it's on Friday the 25th of March from 9:30 to 12:30, with hot drinks served from 9 a.m. and the invitation to stay on for some lunch if you wish. Book your place by sending Ruth an email to manxlanguage@culturevannin.im. Or if you'd like to look at details of the morning again, you'll find them on the website learnmanx.com. Look for CREE AS ANNYM, Heart and Soul, which is the name of the morning. And now to another Ruth, who's going to be joining us each week during Lent with an invitation to do a bit of spring cleaning. Following the breakdown of her own mental health some 12 years ago, Manx-born Ruth Rice founded Renew Wellbeing, a charity that runs simple, cafe-style spaces where, basically, it's okay to not be okay. where well-being is the top priority. And whilst everyone and anyone is welcome at Renew without pressure or judgment, Ruth's own deep faith puts God at the centre of all she does. In her latest book, The A to Z of Wellbeing, Ruth uses every letter of the alphabet not to give instructions or judgments, but to help us find our own peace and wholeness. And each week during Lent, Ruth will choose a letter at random from her alphabet of well-being and offer us some thoughts that we might use to spring clean our own mental health and perhaps even reach Easter embracing a new life. Today, the letter is B for breath.
It may seem odd to have breathing as a habit of well-being because we pretty much have to do it, don't we? But I've found for my well-being there's a way of breathing more deeply, more slowly, that really helps each day with my well-being. One of the times that made me aware of how vital this practice of slow, steady breathing is a really sad story. At the very start of this embracing of new habits as I emerged from my breakdown, I met with a group of ladies to meditate on a psalm and practice new rhythms of prayer. We called this the cup group, holding a cup, our lives like a cup, knowing we're held in God's hands. There were multiple small groups in people's homes doing this. It was fantastic. The host made a great feast of breakfast, and then we took hold of our cups of coffee and had a go at meditating on a psalm verse together. After the period of quiet, we wouldn't discuss what God had said or not said. That would be too much pressure. Instead, we shared how the time had felt, whether we had managed to stay in the moment, what had helped, what had not helped. And we gradually increased the amount of time from a minute to 2 to 20 minutes of quiet. I know this might be too much in your life or in a Renew space. I often advise 30 seconds maximum of shared silence because people can be quite scared of silence. But this was a group of mostly Christians committed to the practice of God's presence. A lady joined the group with a friend. She was not a church person, but she was deeply spiritual and talked about her breathing techniques as someone who'd been a speech therapist. We had decided to honour each other, not to force our views on anyone, and to learn from each other. So we learnt from this dear lady how to breathe more deeply as we took in God's word. She in turn met with Jesus as we sat in the quiet. Sadly, she was going through intense cancer treatment, and as well as praying for healing, we together learnt how she faced her treatments using the breath prayer and psalm meditation we were practicing together. We longed for a miracle, but I was with her when she took her last breaths in the hospice with her family around her. And it was a miracle, even in the sadness, to see her practices come to full fruitfulness in those last moments. Her decision to breathe each breath fully enabled her to take that last breath of shared air with us. And as I prayed and spoke the words of Psalm 23 over her, "You shall not want," I saw her waiting to breathe the same air as Jesus. I saw her smile as she knew his breath was waiting to receive her breath. I've been with a lot of people in their last days, and those who've practiced breathing in God's love do seem to find it easier to let go of earthly air when the time comes. This is a difficult subject, I know. I've also seen people die in real pain, and I've not understood why peace has not come. I'm not trying to suggest we try to die better. But in this lady, I saw someone who knew her breath was a gift from God, and she surrendered it back to him with such grace. Weirdly, dealing with death has made me very grateful for every breath. What breathing exercises do you find helpful? Can you describe a time when you were most aware of breath as an issue for your well-being? Lord God, who breathed life in us, the very air around us, the miracle of life, is in this oxygen you make. And so we choose to still ourselves, to notice how we fill ourselves with your presence every moment, you in every breath we take. From the first one to the last, in our future and our past, it's your breath when we are sleeping. You will greet us when we wake.
I know the plans I have for you. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future.
For I Know the Plans I Have for You. Music by Kevin Memley, sung by the Sunday at 7 choir from Ajax, Ontario. And Ruth will be back next week with another letter from her alphabet of well-being. But if you'd like to follow Ruth's daily videos, you'll find them at ruthricebooks.online. And now it's time to take a look at our notice board, and we begin with a date for your diary. This is a National Day of Reflection in association with Marie Curie UK, remembering those lost in the pandemic. And the date is Wednesday, the 23rd of March, and it's going to be in the Cathedral in Peel. The Cathedral will be open from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. on that day, offering both a quiet space for anybody who wants to pop in for a moment of private prayer or reflection, and the option of 3 short services through the day, all dedicated to those who died due to COVID. At 9:30 a.m. there will be a service of Holy Communion. At 12 noon there will be midday prayers, and at 5:30 there will be a sung evening prayer. But you are also most welcome to pop in and visit quietly, perhaps light a candle, or you are welcome to visit the cathedral gardens and pick some flowers and add them to the vases that will be provided in the cathedral in memory of those who died. That's a National Day of Reflection in the Cathedral in Peel on Wednesday the 23rd of March, when the Cathedral will be open from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. And now some notice board news for this coming week. Because of the volume of churches taking part, I'll be giving a complete roundup of our Lent lunch details on sundown tonight at around about 10:15. But I do have notice of one cancellation. Usually the parish of All Saints and St George's serve Lent lunches in All Saints Hall each Monday, but due to a shortage of helpers caused by illness, I'm afraid lunch this Monday has been cancelled. Hopefully lunches will resume as normal next Monday. I'll let you know on next Sunday's notice board. It's not a Lent lunch, but there is a regular Super Monday in Colby Methodist Church. Homemade soup with fresh bread and tea or coffee served from noon until 1 in the lounge in Colby Methodist Church on the first Monday of each month. No fixed charge, but donations to cover costs would be welcome. Also this week, on Tuesday the 15th, there's a coffee morning in Port Erin Methodist Church in aid of the leprosy mission, with stalls and a raffle. It'll be open and welcoming you in from 10 until 11:30. And now, some things happening next Saturday the 19th. Selby Methodist Church invite you to their coffee morning in the church at the crossroads on the Selby Strait. It's on Saturday from 10 until noon, and as well as refreshments, there'll be a raffle and stalls too, with proceeds divided between local charity I'll Listen and All We Can, the Methodist Relief and Development Fund working in Ukraine. And also on Saturday the 19th at 7 p.m, Onken Methodist Church are having a quiz night with light refreshments. They say, let's get together and have some fun. This is suitable for all ages, so come along and bring a friend or two with you. It's just £5 admission for adults, free admission for children. And get your tickets from Celia on 460 965. 460 965. And that's all that we've time for now. But I'll be back later, so do please join me if you can, tonight at 9 o'clock for Sundown, a rich mix of easy listening music to round off your weekend. And do please email me if you've got items for the notice board or you'd like to request a favourite hymn to be included in a future programme. My email is judithlay@manxradio.com. So, till whenever we meet again, this is Judith saying thank you for listening, and I wish you and those you love a blessed and peaceful week, and a very good morning.
The nation stays